This is Charlie Rose.
This is a cultural event. After 25 years, Oprah Winfrey is ending her daily talk show. For many, it marks the end of an era in television. The final episode aired earlier today.
I started the show as a job and was very happy to get the job, but it was not long before I understood that there was something else going on here, more than just job satisfaction. Something in me connected with each of you in a way that allowed me to see myself in you and you in me. I listened and grew, and I know you grew along with me. Sometimes I was a teacher, and more often you taught me.
Oprah is leaving to focus on OWN, her new television network. Her story and her rise is well known. She was born poor in rural Mississippi in 1954. She arrived in Chicago in 1983 to host her own morning talk show. She ultimately created a media empire and became one of the most influential people in the world. Phil Donahue once wrote of Oprah, "There is no match for you in media history. You're not only hot, you're cool, the dream of girl for millions of ambitious young women whom you've inspired all over the world." Ted Turner once wrote, "I have often said that if women ruled the world for the next 100 years, we would all be better off." I have a feeling that with the possibilities at Oprah's fingertips, we may be one step closer. Here is a look at what she did over the years.
I'm Oprah Winfrey, and welcome to the very first National Oprah Winfrey Show!
I have lost, as of this morning, 67 pounds since July 7th, 67 pounds and 30 inches from my bust, my waist, and my hips.
What we want to do is start a book club here on the Oprah Show, because I know a lot of you are in reading clubs out there and you have a book of the month and so forth, and I want to get the whole country reading again. Those of you who haven't been reading, I think books are important. We ask you all to collect, your small change, just kind of laying around the house this year, so that we could send 50 students, one from every state, to college. We got a grand total of $3,557,084.94. We needed to measure your feet so we know when you walk out today that you get a brand new pair of sneakers. So here we are, halfway through the season 24. And it still means as much to me to spend an hour every day with you as it did back in 1986. So why walk away and make next season the last? Here is the real reason. I love this show. This show has been my life. And I love it enough to know when it's time to say goodbye.
Joining me now, Bill Carter of the New York Times, Khalifa Sano of the New Yorker Magazine, and Ali Wentworth, who has worked on the Oprah Show over the years. I am pleased to have all of them here to mark this particular fascinating time and occasion. So what do we say about this moment?
Well, I think we say goodbye to the Oprah Winfrey Show, but not goodbye to Oprah. I think she is going to do a lot more, and I think she's going to do a lot more than just television. I think she's a huge philanthropic advocator, and I think she's going to get very involved in that as well. Okay, so what's been going on over the last couple of weeks, and how did they decide to wind it down the way they did? I think it was important to do something for her. I had a feeling that the last show would be with her audience, because that is her, her family.
That's how she defines it.
Yes, and I was asked to go to the last two shows, which is sort of one long performance. And it was, there's no other way to describe it. It was just like one person, one celebrity after the other. Stevie Wonder and Jamie Foxx, it was really, and the Lord Jesus Christ, and
he showed up, did he?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, but it had moving moments. All the men that she had put through college, right, came with candles, and it was an extravaganza, and still, it didn't even touch on everything she's done over the 25 years and the people she's touched and changed. I mean, she's had a huge impact on, and not just our country, globally. I mean, a huge impact. People have changed their lives for her.
What do you think her impact was?
Well,
is.
if you look at her career, there's these series of incredible transformations, right? She escapes TV news to become part of this talk show thing that's happening. And then brilliantly in the mid-90s, she escapes the talk show pack, right? And kind of rebrands her show as, you know, Live Your Best Life TV. And then I think if you look at the last, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, you see another transformation where the show becomes a little more self-conscious because the enormity of who she is and the importance of her show becomes impossible to escape and, in fact, becomes the main subject of the show. I think you could date that to the Pontiac car giveaway in 2004, where all of a sudden the Oprah show is this place where you might get a car. And she knows and she acknowledges that for the audience, going to watch the Oprah show is a special experience. For people on stage, being on the Oprah show is a special experience. So the Oprah show becomes this kind of alternate reality where everything is always special. And I think this comes to its logical conclusion this year, where parallel to the show on the Oprah network is season 25, Behind the Scenes of the Oprah Show. So there's a show that takes you behind the scenes of the Oprah Show. And in fact, a few weeks ago on the season 25 Behind the Scenes of the Oprah Show, they took you behind the scenes of season 25. And if I recall correctly, it was behind the scenes of the behind the scenes of the Oprah show. And that's a good example of how she has, I think, really cleverly negotiated this thing that's got to be really difficult. It starts as a kind of a forum for people to talk and exchange ideas, and the forum gets bigger and bigger and kind of becomes its own subject.
I just want to say I was at the show many times, but I used to always watch the audience before we walked out. And a lot of them had been waiting 10 years for tickets. I mean, like, just
10
lived.
years
oh,
for tickets?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I would look at the audience as Oprah walked out before us when we were doing the Fridays Live. And, I mean, you see their expression. As soon as they saw her, they'd start crying. Their whole faces, which, it was like really like a spiritual movement.
This is the interesting thing.
Go ahead.
Oprah started out, and really the reason she was able to be so successful was that she connected to people in a really deep way. They got her, and she got them, and
she brought them into her life.
She also thought the way they did. Like, she could anticipate what they wanted her to ask the guest. She was really good at that. She wasn't just doing rote questions. She was very good at that, and she kept that up for a very long time, despite becoming this larger-than-life figure. And somehow she still was able to do it. I do think there was a change, though. I think you're so accurate in this, that it became much more self-conscious, because she's huge. As you point out, people are like weeping when they see her. This is a person that has transcended, like, the normal human interactions.
Does that mean that, everything sort of came together for her because she was African-American, because she battled with weight, which so many people do, because she had her own insecurities about herself, yet she had this enormous sort of success?
But isn't that sort of what friendship is based on? I mean, my friends are friends that share or discuss their issues. You can't have a one-sided.
She became the ultimate friend.
She became a friend who listens, who really, she's fantastic at listening, and nothing goes by her without her going, wait a minute, why would you say that, or why would you think that? And she's like that offset too. We were once in Dallas, and thousands of people just screaming, and cops, and craziness, and it was really funny because she came out of Oprah, screaming, crying, trying to reach her women, like the Beatles. And then Gail walked in, Gail, and then Nate Berkus. Then it was a little quieter, Nate. And then I walk in, and like two women were like, hey, Allie. But even when we weren't working, when you're with her, she's genuinely engaged. She's not somebody that walks off the set and see you later. She's talking to you, what's going on. Is George, you're exhausted? She really connects
She's asking you
with
if your
everybody.
husband's exhausted?
Yeah, she'll talk about anything. My dog died, and she sent me the most beautiful email. She connects to people in a way that I
have never seen.
And that's why, she's so successful as a television figure. People don't understand that television really works if you come across as the person you really are.
Yes.
Right.
And what she was able to do from the very start, and I was fortunate enough to see the very first show she was ever on in Baltimore, because I was in Baltimore writing about TV at the time. It was instantly there. That connection, this is who I am, and I can talk to you just like a regular person. That was always there for her. It was automatic. And I think, as you said previously, she found what she could do great, and
she said it today.
Yeah.
She said, I found what I was destined to do, what I was born to do.
Just no doubt about it.
You know, and where she found her happiest moments, I assume. There is this, in the arc of the show, I read this as a story in the Washington Post called The Front Page, The End of Oprah, But the Empire Remained. Daytime TV's abdicates throne after 25-year reign, enters next phase. That the ratings had begun over the last 10 years to because
slide.
of different competition,
Well, there's more
or because
competition. There's more. I mean, there's more channels. It's very difficult for no television show cannot be diminished when there is being parsed so many ways. But I also think, my own opinion is that she became a little less the Oprah that they knew. That's my feeling.
Because of all the stories about the glamour and everything else?
Well, she's gigantic. She's gigantic. She was a little bit less than the the figure that I think people were comfortable with on occasion, because celebrities praised her, and she's worth $3 billion. I mean, that's got to become a factor in your life.
I think a big part of her appeal was that she was a teacher but also a student, and in that kind of middle phase, starting from the mid-90s to maybe the mid-aughts, you got this feeling that she was really on a quest for something, trying to figure something out. It's extraordinarily ambitious. I mean, she's basically trying to figure out these spiritual questions, essentially sort of her own ideology, and figure out what it is. And I think in the last years, you got more of a sense that she had figured it out, and that she was no longer in that process of trying to figure it out. And
she had figured out what?
She had figured out what she believes about life, about spirituality, about love. And so it wasn't so much she was looking for answers to these questions. It was more closer that she had the answers to these questions. And again, I think that's part of why, on one level, that's part of why she's more influential than someone like Judge Judy, who beats her in the ratings, is because she stands for basically a way of living, and she stands for an ideology. But I think that to certain viewers, it might feel a little more closed off, because it might feel like someone who's figured out her life, or figured out what she believes.
To some people, it can feel like proselytizing too, I think.
Well, sure, there's that too, and I think really trying to kind of trace the evolution of her belief system is fascinating in and of itself.
One more commercial point. The commercials on this last episode were selling at $1 million for 30 seconds?
Yeah. Like a Super Bowl, kind of.
And do they have any idea what's the estimated audience?
I don't know. It's very hard to say. On a syndicated show, you're not going to get a gigantic, massive, But I mean, I think she'll be in the tens of millions for sure.
There's a lot of Oprah parties that were happening
You think
all
any
over the
TV
country. They were.
executives-
Really?
Yeah.
People celebrating the...
People all coming together to watch the fun,
I say
cry
like Super
together,
Bowl,
and eat popcorn
The,
together.
the King World Syndicate people, CBS people, were among the weepiest, probably.
Sure. Roger King sort of started syndicating her early on, didn't he?
He did, and she was incredibly loyal to him. Very, very loyal to, because he helped her launch.
She was talk to me about her as a business person.
She's very smart, really savvy. She understood the business. She understood this whole syndication aspects of it. She understood the ownership positions that she wanted to get. And as time went on, and she was generating such big audiences and driving them into news, and she saw what they were doing. She got more and more.
She understood how valuable she was.
She knew how valuable she was.
One of the best shows of the season was the two-parter with Iyanla Vanzant, right? Who at a certain point was her protege and was kind of going to be the next Oprah, and it didn't work out for her, and the deals fell apart, and she had problems in her life and business problems, and it was amazing to see these two women face to face, and you saw all the mistakes that Oprah didn't make, and you saw how easy it would have been to somehow not sustain this performance for 25 years. And you compare her, you try to think who to compare her to. I mean, Johnny Carson is her opposite, but it's someone else who had that kind of sustained performance.
I will say she came along at exactly the right time for this to work. I mean, she was kind of a protege of Donahue. Donahue, she idolized Donahue initially, because Donahue did this kind of show. He took the show and made it important that women watch for issues and not just for makeovers and things like that. And she realized you can do that kind of, if you mix in entertainment, but you also do real and serious shows. But the timing was perfect for that, because there was just an explosion in interest in all of that, and women were watching the show, and she was able to get the prime time for a syndicated show leading into the news,
and to detabloid it at exactly the right time.
And that's another incredibly savvy thing she did. It could have tipped over at that point and said, no. She said, I'm not doing any of that anymore, and she was able to pull it off.
And I mean, now the question is, she ends the show, she has the Oprah Network, which, although she wouldn't like to say it, is basically a reality TV network. She calls these shows docuseries, but the network is basically full of unscripted dramas, full of reality TV shows.
What's she going to do on this? Oprah Network?
The next chapter, isn't that?
Yeah.
I think she's going to do specials. I think she's going to travel and she's going to interview people that interest her. That's sort of what I've gotten.
And part of the question is whether this format survives, whether, you know, the Anderson Cooper and Ricky Lake and all these people that are jumping into
Well, this is what's so
Anderson
interesting.
Cooper's going to succeed Oprah?
Yeah, he's starting in the fall with a talk show.
Yeah.
But everybody says, oh, so-and-so is going to be the next Oprah.
Right.
No one is going to be the next Oprah.
No.
No one will be the next Oprah because of who she is, of her time on television.
Right.
And television isn't like that anymore. There's no
She
next...
has made careers, hasn't she?
Huge.
Oh, yes.
I'm actually, this is very funny, I'm just handing in a book to HarperCollins this week. And last year she kept saying, hurry up, write your book, we could do something. And I was going,
Trying to get done before the show's over. You missed.
I did.
What happened to
I'm
you?
the idiot that the day she does her final show, hands in
the
my
book,
area. But
Why couldn't you have done this at
it's
least
the creative
2 weeks
initiative,
earlier?
Charlie. I couldn't
You
force
couldn't
it.
get there.
I couldn't.
Yeah.
I mean,
we
Now,
didn't mention it.
did you harbor ambitions of being an Oprah?
no. I was just happy to be participating in it the way I was.
And how did you participate?
I
You'd show up on Friday and...
I did the Fridays live, and then that didn't work. I think because it was a live show, the syndicators didn't have a lot to advertise. And then I did, you know, they'd say, go become a Dallas Cowboy cheerleader. Go jump out of a plane.
And that's what you would do?
Of course. Oprah tells you to jump out of a plane, you know.
You jump.
You never said no?
Never.
You what?
I never said no. No, it's, you know, to date, the greatest job I've ever had.
Why is it the greatest job you've ever had?
Because she's a fantastic boss. And the company, I'm telling you, I don't know if it's a Midwestern thing, but all the producers are incredibly nice and thorough and hardworking. I mean, it's really, as far as like a work situation, it should be a template for all workplaces. But also...
It is. It's an amazing place to work.
An amazing place to work.
And she takes them all on big vacations once a year for a month or so.
Also, I mean, they work for this woman.
Yeah.
I mean, or they worked for this woman. I mean, they would 17 hours a day. I mean, and they were never bitter about it. You know, I'd go on a field shoot and, you know, the producer would be like, oh, yeah, no, we've just been up for 48 hours doing that. But not upset. I mean, just...
Did she have a Midas touch, or were there failures for...
I think there were. I think she's always been good at if she's plugging something on her show or does her show about something. There have certainly been times when she moves on and kind of doesn't look back. I mean, Rhonda Byrne is a good example where she really kind of got behind Rhonda Byrne in her book The Secret.
Oh yes, yes.
And you know, there were.
Now, what does that say about her, Oprah, that she got behind that? What was it about that kind of book that made a logical extension of Oprah's sort of hands-on?
That book kind of encapsulated a lot of what she already believed, and which is this idea that what you put out into the universe is what you get back. And it's interesting because on the one hand, it speaks the kind of language of emotional liberalism, which is that it's all about feelings and it's all about feeling good, but it also speaks the language of economic conservatism, which is that you get what you deserve and that people in general get what they deserve. And it's really, in a way, it's a real kind of subtle philosophy, and it goes back to New Thought in the 19th century.
Let's just talk about that, because it's interesting to me in terms of who she is. I mean, she's that.
Right.
Bill?
But she's also, as I said, I think she's a really savvy business person. She's a boss. She's very good at, you know, managing. She manages a staff. I think she's also a secretive person in some ways. You know, she doesn't let people in that part of her world, you know, very easily. And you know, I think she has, like, you know, pretty strict deals with people who stop working for her. They're limited in what they can do and say after they left. I don't know if you had that, but
No.
but you know what I'm talking about, right? That she had control. She's a controlled person. She wants to exercise control.
That's why it was so shocking to see that some of the stuff with Stedman Graham, her longtime partner, on the final shows. You saw him up on stage, kind of talking to her and talking about love. It was kind of startling because it was something you weren't used to seeing on the Oprah show.
This is an Oprah question. Why didn't they ever marry?
I don't know, but being used to Oprah surprises, I was like, this is it. He's going to propose right here on the finale. It's going to be amazing.
Did you really?
Did you think that?
I didn't think that.
But there was a small voice in my head
why
that
didn't
thought
they
there was
ever
going to
get
be
married?
something dramatic.
No, that's an open question. I think one of the other amazing things about Oprah, she connects extremely well with women who are married and have children, something she did not experience.
Well,
and yet she, you know, relates in that way, and we'll talk about Stedman as a partner and all of that. And you know, I think it's a reflection of she's very private about that part of her life.
But that's also part of the fairy godmother, right? If you're talking about a kind of a makeover or a transformation, usually the agent of change is someone who stands outside of that world, slightly outside of that social world. So a woman who doesn't have kids is the person who's going to help people understand how to deal with their kids or how to raise their family.
It certainly seems she made a conscious decision that she wasn't going to marry. I mean, apparently.
Well, Ali, come on, you know more about this than we do.
Oh my God!
You never brought it up?
The show's taking a weird turn.
No, why is it taking a weird turn? Because
I don't.
Wait, you've talked about exchanging Christmas presents. You've talked about this sort of personal relationship. You've talked about the friendship that exists between you.
He's going
why wouldn't you share?
You're getting the Oprah treatment.
But we're not intimate. I mean, I don't. You know, she doesn't. We've never had discussions about her personal life.
There's an interesting point.
I'm not in that circle.
Now, who is in that circle? Gail?
Yeah,
Gail's in that circle. Some of her producers, I think, have been in that circle.
And I'm sure she's got a
Maria
few
Shriver
girlfriends.
is in that circle.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I'm not.
That goes back to Baltimore?
Baltimore, yes. The television station there. Yeah. They were real good friends, and they've stayed really good friends.
That was another moment when she popped up on the finale. I was like, oh, here comes the interview is going to happen right now.
Right. You had scenarios for this movie,
well,
didn't
sure,
you?
because I'm used to watching Oprah. I'm used to stuff is going to happen.
Big payoff.
Did you continue to watch it while she was on at 4 o'clock over the last 4 or 5 years? Have you watched it
I'm more likely to catch the 1:07 a.m. broadcast than the 4 p.m. broadcast.
I'm judging you.
That's just but you know, I watched the show mainly, but I never missed an episode of season 25 behind the scenes because I thought to me that was fascinating. Watching her
piercing the veil, huh?
Just watching her interact with the producers and watching her do this thing that she's so good at. It's always interesting to watch people do something.
And by the way, to go back to what you were just saying, I also think that, believe it or not, the American public, her fans, don't really care that much about the Stedman and the personal stuff. What she connected with them on was sexual abuse and, you know, and addiction, and those are the things that the fans really care about. And it's funny because it's the opposite of most celebrities. They don't want you to know about the sexual abuse and the drugs and everything, but they're happy to talk about it. I don't know if we're getting married. Maybe we will. I don't know. You know, so it doesn't. Speaking as a fan of the show, it never bothered me that she didn't divulge her personal life.
Didn't bother me either.
I thought it was more intimate, the stuff she was sharing.
Yeah, but I mean, the gossip was, in terms of the curiosity about all this, was huge. I mean.
Oh, I mean, Gail and Oprah are lesbian. I mean,
all that kind of stuff. But I mean, Stedman and sort of sense of
because what else is there to do with her?
Married,
I mean, if you got to find tabloidy stuff, there's no other place to go.
Is that relationship real? Yeah. There's a lot of questions about that. Did they actually have a real relationship? Was certainly kicked around? But I don't think. I think that sort of challenges Oprah because when people say, "Well, she's secretly gay," I say, "Well, Oprah would say it if she was."
Exactly.
I mean,
she said that.
Yeah, she would say that. I think she wouldn't keep that a secret.
How could she have a lot of the interviews she's had over the 25 years and not come out if she were gay? I mean, people would be there'd be torches. They'd be storming.
And we know she doesn't like people who are frauds.
Yeah.
But part of what's unusual about her is that she's unusually uncynical about celebrity. In other words, the kind of like snarky sensibility of kind of loving a celebrity by making fun of them or taking digs at them or tearing them down. Her show is one of the last places on TV where no matter who the celebrity is, whether it's Colin Firth or Katy Perry, she's equally kind of respectful and kind of treats them well. And in some ways, that's a throwback.
Yeah.
Whether she actually really likes them or not.
Yeah.
I mean, recently this season she had Rob Lowe on, who I haven't thought about for years, really.
He's great on Parks and Rec.
And is he?
Yeah.
But after this interview,
Parks and Recreation.
He's really good on that.
He's very funny. But after the interview, I was like, I'm going to go buy his book. I think he's fantastic.
Oprah and race. Change.
Well, it's...
Or was she...
She acknowledges this in interesting ways, and she, again, going back to this Iyanla Vanzant thing, which, again, I love these moments where you see a little something you're not expecting to see. She says, people come up to me and ask me why I don't do more for black people. And this was an example of a time when I tried to do something more for black people. And so I think she's been canny in not choosing and not trying to choose between, I'm appealing to black viewers or I'm appealing to the mainstream somehow. You don't hear a lot of talk among black viewers that somehow Oprah has left them behind or sold them out, or it's more like Obama status where
she appeals to people.
Yes, and if anything, black people are proud of her for appealing to such a wide demographic.
It is said that she added 1 million votes to Obama.
Well, she clearly was a factor. I mean,
in the primaries,
she just was, because I mean, she's got a huge following, and she basically gave this guy a platform like no candidate could ever. A
kind of endorsement that everybody, and the fact that she was a woman made a difference.
I think so, because of the Hillary aspect, for sure.
And it's funny because usually her approach tends to be more small c conservative in terms of not going way out on a limb. But every once in a while, another good example is the run up to the Iraq War, and she does a couple of shows that are essentially anti-war shows, saying looking at opinion around the world. And again, it was a pretty unusual thing for someone of her stature to be doing right at that point. And I think she has a good sense of when she's able to do that and when she can kind of go out on a limb.
I thought it was fascinating in the early part of her career when she had the skinheads on. And that was one of the few shows back then where I went, wow, she's amazing. That these guys, these skinheads that were so full of hate and rage and called her a monkey, and I mean, as you're watching it going, I can't even watch this. This is so horrific. And how she dealt with them, and then years later when she went to prison and talked to pedophiles, that she actually is very good at not judging people, and that's so hard to do. I mean, think about so many people that have had talk shows that have walked off themselves, or they've gotten in fights, and she's very good at maintaining that. I'm going to let you have your voice. I may not agree, but I'm going to listen to you. And it was fantastic. At the end of the season, she had these two of the skinheads back on and said, what have you changed? Have you grown? And they were sort of mortified about their behavior.
Did they have hair?
Did they have hair?
Yes. One of them might have been a little bald, but I think that was age.
I'm a skinhead.
She always kept the show in Chicago.
Yeah, that was another very interesting strategic move, because she did local TV in Chicago.
And Phil Donahue was from Chicago as well.
Phil Donahue was in Chicago. And when the show went national, she stayed in Chicago. She didn't go to New York or L.A. And she became, obviously, the biggest thing in Chicago.
Was she up against Phil when she started?
Well, they would do the show live in Chicago at the same time, but then the syndication would be all different times.
Right, I understand that, but in Chicago.
I think they probably overlapped. Yeah, they probably did overlap. Yeah.
And there's that that episode where she had all the other talk show hosts come back on stage and sort of toast her outlasting them, which was an amazing.
Who was in that group?
Who was it? It was Donahue, Montel Williams, Ricky Lake, Sally Jesse Raphael.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. And they all had to say, well, you're the best.
Yeah. The Kingdom Oprah. Yeah. The Kingdom of Oprah.
But think about what you do for a living and how difficult it is, maybe not for you, but for other people, to book guests. I mean, it's hard to book guests. She's in Chicago, and people have come to her.
Right. Yes.
The biggest celebrities will fly.
Now, they didn't originally. Because she did content show, issue shows, and celebrities didn't go.
The first show was like men and women, it was about marriage or something.
Yeah, I mean, she did that for years, but she was so big that celebrities would just go to see Oprah, to sit at her feet, basically.
Well, yeah, because by the end it was a meeting of equals, or it was like, they were coming to pay tribute.
Yeah.
She had a wonderful line, which I think this was when she appeared on the first program that Piers Morgan did when he came in to follow Larry King. She said, "This is the thing about me that I really admire about myself. I know where my lane is, and I know how to stay in my lane."
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I think what we're all observing is that this is a woman who knew herself extremely well, and knew what she was good at, and knew how to really work that. And as she changed, she was able to find new parts of herself.
But she took risk. I mean, she took a risk in terms of acting. She tried to act. She tried to be a Broadway producer. And
I thought it was interesting because she acted and she did well, and she got good reactions to it.
Spielberg was her first director.
Spielberg, and then she sort of like pushed it aside. Yeah. She didn't really pursue it. A lot of other people would have been caught up in that. I think it would have said, "Hey, look what I can do. I can be an actress." Oprah kind of knew. Maybe that's not good for me.
But we're about to figure out, what is she without a daily talk show? I mean, is this Michael Jordan playing baseball? Is this, in other words, or is it she's going to be just as good?
Jordan owns a team, by the way.
Sure, but I'm saying, is she? But how much? What happens when you take the Oprah show away from Oprah?
Well, then you're even hungrier for her specials.
Right.
Well, but I think it's going to be a real challenge. I mean, the thing about starting a new cable network in this particular time and getting the right distribution and getting the right access, it's a real tough road.
I guarantee she's at the right place if she wants to do that. I mean, the Discovery people
Channel,
are plenty smart.
They're plenty smart, but you know, you're in the middle of a range of channels that people, you know, people don't watch that many channels. So she has to do something to stand out, and I think she'll find it. But it's going to be a challenge.
Do you think she ends up doing a daily talk show again?
No.
No.
I think she's not the type to do that. First of all, she doesn't need to.
Yeah, but but the point is, I mean, I think she didn't do it because she needed to. She did it because she wanted to.
Yeah.
I mean, she didn't need to keep the brand alive. She didn't need to make the money. She didn't need. She did it because that's what she wanted to do.
She didn't need to give it up to start a cable channel either. She could have kept doing it. She could have kept doing the Daily Show if she wanted to.
So then why did she
call.
make that choice? Why did she say 25 years is about right? I mean, 25 is magical.
I think it's the
rather
same
than 24,
thing that
26.
Jerry Seinfeld said, which is,
Yeah.
you know, you go out on top. You don't wait for it to fizzle out. You physically feel when it's enough, and you have to have the strength to go.
You know what I thought was interesting? She interviewed Leno when Leno came off his disastrous 10 o'clock show, and Leno kept saying, you're not going to give it up. You're not going to give it up. And she said, yes, I am, because he's the kind who can't give it up. He can't give it up. But she kept saying, no, you're wrong. I'm going to give it up.
Yeah.
And she, of course,
the all-time champion of giving it up is Johnny Carson.
Well, obviously, he also was a guy went to a point.
But he went off and never appeared on television. She's going to appear on television. She's going to do
Right.
other things. She has her own network.
Right.
Carson walked away and never came back.
Right. Well, I think when you do a show like his, you can't do another thing. There's not something else you can do. You're not going to go act in movies. But I think for Oprah, what she did is very flexible. She can do a lot of different things, and she has enormous interests. By the way, we haven't even mentioned the book club thing, which to me was amazing. She got the nation reading again.
Yeah.
What
And
an
reading
amazing
serious
thing.
books.
Yeah.
Reading serious books. A remarkable thing.
And I think she'll do
how
more with
we-
her
how-
girls' school and education. I mean, I think this is what I mean about, I think she's going to really be focused on all her philanthropic
But do you think
endeavors.
her influence wanes somewhat without that platform?
No.
She'll miss it. I think she will miss it
Yeah.
because, you know, just being out there every day is, you know,
You could
when
probably-
Carson stopped his show, his voice lost some timbre. He actually, people would talk to him on the phone, and he sounded a little different because he wasn't on stage projecting every night. And he missed it so much, he wrote monologues that he would read on the phone to his old producer.
And he'd send in jokes,
He
right?
sent in jokes to Letterman, yeah.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Great to be with you.
Thank you. Have Bradley Cooper back at this table. Welcome.
Thank you.
$470 million for the first one. We think the second one might do equally well, if not better.
Right.
How much would it take to get you to be in the second movie?
Well, it took $5 million.
That was it, wasn't it?
That was it.
They
Yeah,
had
yeah.
no contract
No, we
to
had no-
commit you to another film.
No, we had no contract at all. And we just decided, here's the thing. Here's why I was stuck, because I love Todd Phillips.
Yeah.
He's a great director. So if I want to do something, the truth is I'll do it for free.
Right.
It's such a hard thing, you know. So luckily I have an agent. And we did this thing called what's called Favored Nations, where all three guys would get the same amount of money.
Right.
And so there's no problem, there's no squabble,
Right,
and then
right.
we'll go make the movie. But we set that up very early on. Warner Brothers was interested in making the movie while we were shooting the first one, which was really interesting.
So what is it you think this one has to capture to be as successful as the first one? What was it about the first one that made it so phenomenally
Well, I think that it was,
commercially successful?
you know, timing is everything. And as you know, all the actors and directors and filmmakers you've had on here, there is no formula to making a hit movie.
Right.
There just isn't. If I'm going to, you know, try a guess, I'd say that you had three unknowns, which was a good thing.
Right.
So you could really just immerse yourself into the story. And you have a chemistry that we just all happen to have, the three of us together. And you have these sort of two archetypes, Phil, the guy that I play, and then on the other side you have Alan, that Zach Galifianakis plays, and you have Stu in the middle. But at the helm, the reason why it worked is Todd Phillips. No question about it.
What does he have?
First of all, he's the coolest guy you'll ever meet. I also think it's this idea, if you look at it, we get away with saying the most outrageous things in this movie, particularly Alan, because nobody takes themselves too seriously. You know, Alan's not in on the joke, so it allows the audience to be in on the joke. And it's also a mystery. I mean, this movie, it works as a comedy, but it also functions as a whodunit, a film noir, a hard-boiled detective movie.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things going on at once. And in
Character disappears again.
yeah, so for the second one, the major decision that we had to make was, do we depart from the structure or do we adhere to it? And I, for one, was adamant about we have to adhere to the structure. As a fan of the first one, if I'm going to watch the second one, I want to see that phone call again from Phil saying to Tracy, we effed up. You know, and I want a ticking clock. I want a missing guy. I want a girl who needs to get her wedding day or she's going to be disappointed. I want to see all those things. So then the question is, okay, how do we adhere to that but make it fresh? Bangkok.
So location is important here.
Everything. You know, and I think 3 characters in the movie say it, you know, Bangkok has him now and she'll never let him go. I mean, it's personified in the movie.
How'd you like Bangkok?
You know, Charlie, I'll tell you, I did this movie called The A-Team, which I thought would be the hardest movie I ever did, and this just miles beyond that.
Because?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, the population of Bangkok, I think, is 10 million, is it, or 9,
Yeah,
11? It's a lot of people in a very small city. And logistically, it was just a nightmare. I mean, it was just a nightmare. And our director loves a clean, small set. And Bangkok is just surplus of food, surplus of people. So if you have a very intimate scene that we would be shooting on the streets, there's just thousands of people everywhere. And that creates an energy. It would be like if we were doing this interview and 40 people were in the room.
Right.
It just changes the dynamic. And it was almost like, you know, walking through mud sometimes, which made it logistically difficult. Added to that, we're halfway around the world. People are getting sick right and left. You know, Ed Helms was popping charcoal pills every 4 days, you know, just so his stomach would stay steady.
When you have this kind of chemistry, where does it come from? I mean, you guys just liked each other as human beings?
Well, for myself, I have to say, I love Ed and Zach, and you know, I've grown to really, they become my best friends, really, and Zach especially is like a brother, and I just have tremendous respect for him as a human being. I think, first of all, I think that respect is the #1 thing. We all really respect each other.
As professionals?
As professionals, yeah. As actors, as people who have a likeness and comedic appreciation. And then as human beings, you know, there really was, as tense as it's been, and, you know, we were on this very specific ride with the first one, experiencing this thing of becoming a, you know, #1 R-rated comedy of all time, and there was never any animosity, any combative energy. It's really been perfect.
What is it about Zach, who's been here, who's a fellow North Carolinian, we know each other for...
You know, I'd boil it down to, and I'm curious what you think when he was in this chair, but he's a guy who's always present.
Yeah.
Always present. And what I envy about him, and especially in Bangkok, he would always go on these walks. And I love to walk, too. I love to put on my headphones and walk around the city. But he does it with a centeredness that I envy. He really is okay on his own all the time. And I think that is an honorable...
I think centered is right. He seems to know who he is.
Very much so.
And like who he is.
Yeah.
And therefore he can take any risk he wants to take.
That's
and he's
right.
willing to try.
That's right.
Many things.
That's right.
You know.
And on top of that, he is a very, very talented actor. I mean, we haven't even seen, we've seen a glimpse of what he's able to do.
I want to ask some variation of the question whether comedy is harder than drama.
Right.
You know, because it seems, most people say it is. But is it harder for you?
You know, I remember Martin Short being interviewed talking about Last Tango in Paris and about the scene when Marlon Brando's with his mother, or his wife, in the deathbed. And if he had to do that comedically, it would have been much more difficult. Personally, making film, or even on stage, it's music. It's like playing music. And you feel the rhythm. And the trick is to make it organic, but adhere to the rhythm.
But comedy has the rhythm.
But I think both do. I really do think both do. It's just a different kind of music. But comedy maybe demands a finer ear for the rhythm of a scene, or the rhythm of how a comedy will play itself together. I mean, you do have to be very cognizant of that. But in theater, for example, with the audience, they're a character in the play. If you don't embrace the fact that, you know, they're going to create the rhythm with you, you're screwed, really, because then they're missing moments. So I
take you to theater for a second when you were with Julia Roberts.
Yeah.
I mean, how much are you adjusting to her rhythm there?
That's the tricky thing. It's almost, you have to find this commonplace. You know, you hope that the rhythm's in the writing, and that you find it together organically. But hopefully the rhythm's in the writing, especially a play. And in 3 Days of Rain, for example, it was a wonderfully written play, and the rhythm was there. And you either had to get on the train that was written, or you're in trouble, because if you miss the momentum, it's just going to fall apart.
That was a risk for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was a risk in the sense that I'd never done a play before.
Right.
And it was Broadway.
Well, you're not sure what you had to risk.
I knew it was something,
Right.
yeah. And what I didn't realize was I was risking my entire profession.
Why did you want to do it?
Because, well, you know, Charlie, I love the character, two characters, and I thought, I have an in, which I always feel like I need to have. I have to have some sort of in, meaning like some sort of, it's not even, I can't even explain it other than I feel like I can do it. Once I have that hook, then I'm willing to jump off the cliff. And I just knew that it would scare the hell out of me to do 8 shows a week in front of 1,100 people on stage with Julia Roberts and Paul Rudd. I just knew that. And the character I first play basically comes on the stage within 20 minutes and has a huge monologue to the audience. And that just scared the hell out of me. I lost 17 pounds during the rehearsal process.
Do you want to go back?
Can't wait.
Really? So you're looking for something that would make sense for you, or is it timing?
Well, it's a little bit of both. I think that, you know, this fall I'm going to hopefully do this movie Paradise Lost, and then maybe The Crow. And then so I'm looking at next summer, I'd love to go to Williamstown again, which I've been to, and do The Elephant Man. That's my dream.
You have a long history with The Elephant Man.
Huge
Was that your
history.
your college thesis?
That's
or
grad school, yeah.
Grad school thesis,
That's
yeah,
right.
From the actress.
That's right, yeah.
MFA.
Yeah. That's right.
So
Yeah.
what is it about The Elephant Man that grabs you?
Well, what I was talking about earlier, that sort of hook that's inexplicable. When I was 12 and my father would show me all these movies, one of them was David Lynch's The Elephant Man, and I still remember, like it was yesterday, Frederick Treves, played by Anthony Hopkins, walking into the cellar where John Merrick was, and just the feeling that it would instill in me was intoxicating.
So that's when you said...
That's when I said...
That's what I want to do.
I got to do that.
When you look at the choices you have now, do you have to find that hook?
Depending, it's a great question. If the director feels so adamantly that I'm the guy, and I respect the director, for example, David O. Russell, who I think is a tremendous director, I just think there was a movie that we were talking about doing, and I didn't necessarily see the hook.
Right.
He did. I would go on that journey with him, trusting that he knows more than I do about what I'm able to do. So I would do that. I would trust a director. That would be the reason that I would do it. Not if the studio said you're the guy.
I've heard actors say, I can't do the role until I see the clothes, until I put on something about the clothes to get a feeling of how I feel inside this actor.
You know, for me, it has to happen way before that.
Yeah.
Way, way, way before that. That would only illuminate certain aspects of the character. But I have not experienced yet not feeling that hook, you know, up until the day of the first wardrobe fitting. I haven't experienced
You've known it beforehand.
I've known it beforehand.
Give us an example of what hooks are.
Okay, well, I'll give you an example of Paradise Lost. Studied it in college, loved it. Had a great Jason Rosenblatt, who's a Milton Scholar at Georgetown. I love the idea of Lucifer being, you know, a very charismatic guy who you agree with, basically. He makes a very sound argument in that poem. And then cut to Legendary Pictures that did The Hangover is the one doing Paradise Lost.
Right.
So I read the script, and I love the idea of 2 sons and a father. And one day the father says to the son, you know our family dog? Yeah, I love the family dog more than you guys. And I'm actually going to build a whole house for the dog to live in. And come here, let me show you. Actually, you guys are going to build the house that our dogs. And I was like, Dad, you're going crazy. And then my brother says, no, Dad's right. I said, no, Dad's not right. Yeah. So I just like the simplicity of it. I always felt a hook into that. And then the betrayal that he feels. So I actually put myself on tape for it in my kitchen with my friend Wes to send to Alex Proyas because he just said the guy from The Hangover is not Lucifer. You know, I just can't see
So once more time, you've got to audition to convince a director that
That's
you're
right.
right because he thinks of you in part as the guy from Hangover.
That's right, and understandably so.
And you're not bothered by that
No,
at all.
God, no, of course not. By the way,
you're thankful for the chance to have him look at what I do.
Absolutely. And by the way, The Hangover provided that chance for him to even talk to me about it.
Right,
That's right. And Limitless actually saw Limitless and said, okay, that guy might be able to carry a movie, but can he play Lucifer?
Right, exactly.
So then the next step is, well, let me put myself on tape and show you. And it really was until I was in my kitchen reading the lines, which is, you know, almost in verse, the screenplay. The poem is obviously, it isn't also in prose, but it's almost in verse. You have to do a sort of mid-Atlantic accent. And you're playing Lucifer in this very imaginative environment. And honestly, Charlie, in my kitchen, it just happened.
You found it.
I just found it. And I sent, and we did.
Who's with you in the kitchen?
Just Wes.
Wes.
Just my friend Wes.
Yeah, right.
On a flip camera.
Right.
This is 2 weeks ago.
A flip camera?
Yeah, flip camera. He's holding it, reading it, like
yeah,
this.
yeah.
And I'm perched up on my stool, pretending to be perched on this ledge.
This is great. Yeah.
It was amazing. And then we did one take, and I remember I said, Wes, and it would also help. My kitchen is airy, and there's an echo, so it really felt like the voice was booming. And I said, Wes, did you feel that? He said, yeah, let's send it.
Send it.
So we just emailed it. And then Proyas emailed me back, Satan lives, with an exclamation point. So that was the hook for me, that experience in my kitchen. And if we do actually get to do the movie, I know that will give me the confidence to go anywhere with that character.
Do you have any sense of a production company to say, I'm at the stage where, I've hit a certain place where I can try this. I can reach out and say, there's a character I'd like to do. There is a story I like.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. I remember Clooney here at this table talking to you, talking about having the keys.
Right, exactly.
And while you have the keys, do as much as you can, Yeah. I certainly don't have the keys, but I know where the door is.
Yeah, exactly. You know where the door is.
I found out where the door is.
So when you get there, you can get the keys. Yeah. When you see him as actor and director, I mean, he is so deeply into both.
Right.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
When he's in acting, he's there at a table like this.
My hunch is he thinks like a director.
I think he does.
Yeah. I think that is. I don't even think that's something you can teach. I think it's just something. It's just the way you see storytelling, and you either see it from your point of view as an actor, or you see the sort of macro as the film and the story. And I've always thought of it as the story. Even when I was a kid with that Elephant Man, I really was thinking about, oh, that's so interesting that I don't know what Merrick looks like. I'm only watching Treves look at Merrick. And then later we see in the medical room Merrick.
Right.
So I was always aware at the very early age of the manipulation of the camera and the editing in order to tell the story in a compelling way. So ultimately, I'd love to direct. That's ultimately what I want to do.
Are you serious?
Oh yeah. In fact, there's this series of science fiction novels called Hyperion by Dan Simmons.
Oh, sure, I know.
Yeah, Hyperion, The Fall of Hyperion, Endymion, The Rise of Endymion. And so this is an example of trying to get things started.
Right.
My friend and I, Connell Byrne, went to Graham King, who owns the rights to Hyperion, and we wrote a treatment on spec saying, look, I know this is a very audacious endeavor, but can you just read this spec we wrote? We think we have a way in to tell the story. So we wrote it, and now we're negotiating. We're going to write the script for it. And who knows what's going to happen. But there's an example of us.
And you will direct and star?
Well, no. First, ideally, I'd love to direct it. There's no way. Yeah. I mean, you know what? I shouldn't say that. You never know. But this is a huge movie. This would be an epic movie. But at least, we've taken the reins and said, you know what? We're going to go after it, and now we're going to write the script. At least we have a shot to write the script for Hyperion.
You're off to Berlin as soon as you leave this table.
Yeah.
Because the film, which opens on May 26th here, is also opening international. You see that more and more in Europe. In fact, there's that one opening. There's no lag between U.S. and Europe, and then
I think just
Asia.
because of the social media, I think it's impossible.
Exactly.
Why would you delay a release?
You once said in an interview, what do you want? You said, I want to get better. I want to get better and better and better. How do you do that other than simply choosing roles well, working with talented people,
Well, I mean, I think you said it's like any sport.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go on a basketball court, you can go on all day, every day.
You
have to.
I know. Always just play with somebody better.
You have to.
Yeah.
You have to want it.
And we talked about De Niro here when you
exactly.
Right.
Yeah, and the hope is that you're going to be able to walk on those courts, and those players are going to say, "Come on."
Yeah.
That's the hope, is that they see something, they say, "Okay, come on, and you can play with us."
Yeah. Thank you for coming. Great to see you again.
Such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Such a pleasure.
Bradley Cooper, the film Hangover 2 opens May 26th in the United States and soon thereafter around the world. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.